Good afternoon, everyone, and may I take this opportunity to welcome the officials of the Ministry of Tourism. The Committee on the Public Administration and Appropriations has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies to ensure that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. B, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies as it occurs and keeps Parliament informed of how the budget allocation is being implemented. And C, the administration of government agencies to determine hindrances to their efficiency and to make recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. The purpose of this public meeting of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee is to examine the 2016 expenditure of the Ministry of Tourism under the following subheads: current transfers and subsidies, Development Program Consolidated Fund, and Infrastructure Development Fund. The committee is desirous of hearing from the Permanent Secretary and key officials of the Ministry of Tourism to discover the challenges being faced and determine possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to assist the Ministry to achieve efficient delivery of services while ensuring that expenditures are embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. At this stage, I'd like to invite the Permanent Secretary to introduce her team.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to honorable members of your committee. My name is Samde Rampasar, and I am currently the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism. I would like to introduce the members of my team, which comprises senior staff of the Ministry of Tourism and the Tourism Development Company Limited, the TDC. Starting from extreme left.
My name is Kamal Bal, the accountant at the Ministry of Tourism.
Good day. My name is Davis Ragunanan, Manager of Finance at TDC.
Good afternoon. Warren Solomon, General Manager Marketing, TDC.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members, honorable members. Keith Chin, CEO of the Tourism Development Company.
Good afternoon, everyone. Anand Maraj, Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator, Ministry of Tourism.
Good afternoon, Leland Dennis, Manager of Sites and Facilities, TDC.
Good afternoon, Chair and honorable members. Sati Jamraj Paramutu, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Tourism.
Thank you, members, and I would now ask the members of our committee to introduce themselves. Am I right?
Good afternoon, Daniel Duki, member.
Good afternoon, Ayana Webster Roy, member.
And I am Bridget Anizet George, and I'm the chair of the committee. I must apologize for our small numbers this afternoon, but our other committee members are engaged in other parliamentary committee business. I would therefore invite Madam Permanent Secretary to start off the discussion with a general introduction about the work of the ministry and the TDC.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Chair, committee members, we are happy to be here at this hearing of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee for the purpose of your examination of expenditure of the Ministry of Tourism for the current fiscal year 2016 under the following subheads: 04, current transfers and subsidies; 09, development program; IDF, Infrastructure Development Fund. The Ministry is here with the TDC, given that we have shared responsibilities for expenditure under these votes. The Ministry has charge for providing overall strategic direction for growth of the tourism industry, for the formulation of national tourism policy and sub-policies, for facilitating and enabling investments in the sector, and for monitoring and evaluating expenditure and performance. The TDC is the implementation arm of the Ministry and has charge for destination marketing and promotion, product development, and processing of investment applications under the Tourism Development Act of 2000. Honorable members, I will now give you a quick overview of the votes in question. Subhead 04, current transfers and subsidies. We have 3 items under this subhead. 001, 01 Caribbean Tourism Organization, CTO. We have an original allocation of 1.2 million, releases of 1.2 million, and spend of $967,575. Essentially, this is a membership due that is due to the Caribbean Tourism Organization. We also have another membership in the United Nations World Tourism Organization, the UNWTO. We have an original allocation of $589,460. Releases in the same amount, spend of $460,358. And the third is 02 Tourism Development Company. It represents a transfer to the state enterprise. Original allocation of 42 million. This is one of the votes that experienced a cut in keeping with the 7% cut by ministries, so that there was a revised allocation under this vote of 39.5 million, a cut by 2.5 million. Releases to date, 30 million. Spend effectively 30 million. Under the development program, 09, we have PSIP original allocation of 22.3 million, of which the Ministry of Tourism has a vote of 9.0 million, the TDC 13.3 million. This is another vote that experienced a cut in keeping with the 7% cut. And there are 2 projects which experienced a cut here. The projects falling under the Ministry of Tourism. The project on cruise was cut by 555,000, amounting in an allocation revised of 1,445,000. The second project that was cut, the project name, Beach Master Plan, cut by 1 million, leaving an allocation of 0. Total cut under PSIP, 1,555,000. Under the IDF, we have an allocation of $37 million in 2016, of which the Sugar Heritage Village accounts for 7 million, and the Maracas Beach Improvement Program, 30 million. Madam Chair, this is an overview of the votes. We do have details. We'll be advised by you as to how we shall proceed.
Thank you so much, Madam PS. So, in terms of the cut, the 7% cut, that was not across the board with all of your votes.
It took place by virtue of our examination of various projects under the different votes, and we looked at projects that we suspected would not be very fast in moving for this current fiscal, and we identified those projects for cut. In addition to what I've indicated in terms of cuts, we had additional cuts in recurrent transfers, which the total cuts amounted to 9,855,000 for the ministry.
Yeah, but in terms of the subheads, your cuts, as I understood them, was not across the board of these three subheads.
No, it was not across the board.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Now, in terms of the Maracas improvement project, that one was cut completely?
No, the Maracas improvement project fell under IDF.
Yes.
A sum of $30 million. That was not cut.
Okay, but in terms of the cuts under, that would have been then consolidated fund?
The cuts would have taken place under the consolidated
Yes,
fund.
there's one with Maracas.
There's a Maracas community project under the PSIP. That's a much smaller project related to the Maracas community.
Yes.
The IDF project was a 30 million allocation to the Maracas Beach Facility Improvement Project.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, could you therefore to give us a little assistance in terms of under your functioning as regards the relationship between the ministry and the TDC? Give us some idea with respect to how is the TDC, the releases to the TDC under current transfers and subsidies, how is that monitored by the Ministry of Tourism?
Madam Chair, following on the reading of the budget and the allocation under the varying votes, the allocation under current transfers and subsidies to TDC, it is primarily for the purpose of meeting administrative expenses of the organization, and the ministry, in keeping with its role of monitoring, oversight and evaluation, do relate very closely to the TDC in terms of oversight of the expenditure. The TDC does submit on a monthly basis reports of expenditure on all three areas of activity. One will be in relation to the vote current transfers and subsidies, which we term administrative expenses. They also report on their PSIP, and there's another item of marketing which is under recurrent, not accounted for under the votes in question.
Yes.
Other than their monthly reports, which they submit to the ministry indicating their expenditure and details on their expenditure. Following on that, we have the M&E unit together with a department in the ministry, the Research and Planning Division, that would review these reports, look very closely at the expenditure to ensure that they are in alignment with the projects that we had identified in the estimates, and we'll also look for efficiency of spend in going through the details. If there are any items that are identified that is warrant of attention, we would so write the TDC and advise them, and we'll keep a follow-up action on these items.
Okay. So as far as the monthly reports, when would have been the last monthly report?
The last monthly report would have been for May of 2016.
For May. Okay, thank you. I'll just invite other members of the committee. I'll start off with Member Duki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good afternoon again. You would have highlighted, Madam PS, the 7% cut. And I take it that as you would have engaged, that you would have examined your organization to determine where you would be able to make, the cut. I want to ask you, in doing so, would you have identified areas of wastage that you would have now eliminated as a result of your examination, so that the 7% cut would not have had the impact as if there were none?
Honorable Member, we would have done it through an examination to determine our sense of comfort that projects would be executed within a certain time frame. That would be in relation to the PSIP projects. The beach master plan, for instance, which was cut by 1 million, we had gone through this, discussed it in the ministry and with TDC, and we were of the view that this would have taken some length of time to execute, based on the fact that we were looking at a beach in an area where the land ownership was yet to be ascertained. In respect of the recurrent cuts, within the ministry, it was mainly among items related to personal expenditure and goods and services, and the cuts were actually in the areas related to households and severance benefits. We cut by 200,000. Remuneration to cabinet appointed committees, 300,000. Short-term employment, $1 million. Official overseas travel, 200,000. Promotions, publicity, and printing, which is really like our marketing vote, that was cut by 4 million. And hosting of conferences, 100,000. So by virtue of the votes they had some level of discretionary expenditure, in the sense that there could have been control, for instance, over overseas travel, short-term employment, hosting of conferences. So those votes lend themselves most readily to the cuts that were required.
You would have identified in your responses when you dealt with benefits that you derive from transfers and subsidies in relation to TDC, networking with the world's top executives in the tourism sector. What are some of the key learning or lessons you would have taken away from that networking that would bring benefit to your operations here?
Honorable Member, in respect of transfers and subsidies to the CTO and the UNWTO, the CTO is the region's tourism development agency. It comprises membership of 33 Caribbean countries, English-speaking, French-speaking, Spanish-speaking, and Dutch-speaking, as well as a myriad of private sector entities, including the Caribbean Cruise Association, the Caribbean Hotels Association, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, airlines. And the vision of the CTO is to position the Caribbean as the most desirable year-round warm weather destination. The agency does provide technical assistance to members of the organization. They provide support in marketing. They provide support in communications, in HR strengthening, in advocacy for the region, and also in the supply of research and statistical information. So we do, as members, have the opportunity to capitalize on all the offerings of these institutions and to use them to our advantage in terms of marketing, product development, development of standards, and so on. A similar thing holds with the United Nations WTO.
In the same vein, because you would have also identified quite interestingly as a benefit access to research on global tourism trends and real-time progress in the industry. What would you see, and of course, any member of the TDC could respond as well, what would you see as some of the contemporary global trends in the tourism sector at this point in time?
I will just make one point and then I will hand over to. In terms of trends, we know that tourism is indeed the largest industry in the world and one in which growth is fairly rapid. Over the last 6 years, global tourism and travel has experienced consistent growth in arrivals. The Caribbean region has also been very fortunate in that regard and have also experienced growth in arrivals. In 2015, Trinidad and Tobago similarly experienced growth in arrivals, and these were from our major source markets, the United States primarily. Our other markets are the UK, the Caribbean, and Canada. But I will defer to the manager of marketing, Mr. Solomon, to give you further information.
Thank you, Honourable Member. When looking at some of the global trends, some of the main areas in which there have been changes over the last few years revolve around the manner in which consumers research and book their travel vacations. And that in itself has impacted on a lot of the marketing programs in which the TDC is engaged, so that partnerships that we would have formed with online travel agencies, tour operators, and other, technology-based travel providers, we would have increased our partnerships with organizations such as those, particularly within the last 2 to 3 years. That allows us to really position Trinidad and Tobago, put Trinidad and Tobago before the consumer, wherever they're looking, whether it's on mobile, whether it's whether it's on the internet, whether it's on their tablets and so on. So that is one of the main things that would have influenced how we communicate to consumers. The cruise sector as well continues to grow, and we would have continued to make investments in developing that sector. Trinidad and Tobago is a bit unique and shares some issues, if you will, with our Caribbean brothers in the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, in that we are very far south and have to get a little more creative and target different types of cruise lines to come this far south. That would mean that we would not always see the traditional cruise lines that we would see almost every day on advertising on television, although they are here. But there are others, particularly the European lines that do longer itineraries that we target as well. So those are just two examples. Yes.
All right, and continuing along that line, I gather that you are telling us that there are significant opportunities available for Trinidad and Tobago to benefit based on the global trends that exist at this time.
Yes, sir.
And you think that we are in a position to take advantage of the opportunities? We have the resources and the know-how to take advantage of those opportunities, because Madam P.S. said that the tourism sector is still growing internationally. So demand is increasing.
Demand is certainly increasing for travel on a global scale. Trinidad and Tobago does possess the raw product on various levels, whether it's the sites and attractions part of the product, the human resources part of the product. Like most other industries, there's always room for improvement to ensure that we remain as a considered destination for vacationers. We face now, as is the rest of the Caribbean, with the opening up of Cuba. And some people choose to see Cuba as a threat for the Caribbean, but Cuba is a Caribbean island. So the Caribbean Tourism Organization, for example, does not see Cuba as a threat. It sees Cuba as one of the brotherhood of the region. But with that destination opening up, particularly to American travelers, because Canadians and Europeans, have never stopped going to Cuba. But it does allow, in this instance, Trinidad and Tobago, both at the public sector level and at the private sector level, to take a good look in the mirror and make sure that we are up to scratch in terms of our service delivery, in terms of our physical product, in terms of how we manage our sites and attractions, so that we don't fall by the wayside while, that particular market, meaning the American market, flocks and droves to Cuba.
And one more question in this round. You identified the impact that technology is now playing in terms of how the customer is engaging his demand. Do we have an appropriate ICT base or technology platform within your operations to leverage on that opportunity? Or would you say that you need significant investment in the area of ICT to, and I'm saying that in the context also, I would have noticed that you have an ICT program in your developmental program. So would you say that you have access to the right type of technology so that you can leverage on that opportunity that exists in the international market?
We have access to it, and one of the projects in which we are engaged currently is the redevelopment of our main website. We would have been, I think, relying more on social media engagement with consumers for the last year and a half. But we expect to go live with a new website at the end of July. And that it's really going to build on what currently obtains with us in terms of our destination website. But taking the consumer, very smoothly and naturally through the process of researching the destination, identifying sites, attractions, itineraries that they may want to engage in, and then taking them all the way to purchase. So that is a timely question, and it's a project that we are looking to complete by the end of July.
Thank you very much.
Member Webster Roy.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I wanted to find out what is the total amount of your allocation that was spent on trips to source markets to date, please. And also, how does it compare to for the same period last year?
Last year. Year to date for 2016, we are at 336,000 TT dollars. 2015, the figure would have been in a similar range. I don't have the exact figure. You can pull it up.
Maybe we could information when TDC finds it.
Okay. In your source markets, you have the contracted services of travel reps and coordinators and so forth. If you compare what you're spending for staff to go out and what you're spending on the services contracted out there, how does it compare? And is it more efficient to just use the services of the outside rep than having the TDC staff go out?
The overseas representation accounts for approximately 18% of our overseas marketing budget. There are, in fact, the majority of activities that take place overseas are managed by our representatives. The issue of nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, tourism professionals who are nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, and who work currently with the TDC or the ministry for that matter, there would always and also be a case for having them present at some of the activities, because what we don't want to ever find ourselves in is a case where the overseas representatives have the entire network of travel trade or media and so on, and Trinidad and Tobago is not a part of that networking process. So that if we were ever to part ways with our overseas representative, we wouldn't want, a drain of networks to go away with them. So there are some activities, some of the major trade shows internationally that we would have representatives from TDC and the ministry at times attend. But as I say, those are in the minority.
I noted that you said with the 7% cut, your revised allocation was 39.5 million. Could you tell me year to date how much you spent on training and development of your staff at TDC and what benefits would have been derived?
Hi, good day. If I may answer that question, unfortunately, due to the 7% cut, one of the line items that suffered was the training of staff, and we didn't cut it totally. To date, we have spent just about $60,000 on training, but it was one of the items that suffered because of the 7% cut.
No, you have $60,000 on training.
Yes, correct.
What was the nature of the training? The reason why I'm asking, because to me, one of the greatest investments you can make is building your human capital. So,
the training about, for instance, recently we had a few persons going on a protocol training, 3 persons. We also had persons going on some earlier the year finance training in terms of updates to the IS, International Accounting Standards. There were also a few in terms of conferences that persons would have attended, but generally those have been the training aspect. In previous years it would have been much higher, and really and truly we would definitely want to engage more training in the years to come.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed that you have a lot going out in terms of rental accommodation. Is there any way you could streamline that so you could have more money to invest in training and development?
So, sorry, I didn't get the first part. Sorry.
I noticed that in terms of expenditure on rental accommodation, it's quite a large sum. So I'm wondering if there's any way we could streamline that so you could have more money to invest in training and development.
Definitely, that is one of the areas that we are looking at together with the Ministry of Public Affairs and the Ministry of Tourism in order to significantly reduce the rental costs that we currently have on our books. And yeah, that definitely would provide some additional resources.
Member Bodo?
My question really relates to, and I'm not sure if we, welcome and sorry for being late, I apologize. My question would relate to the cruise tourism initiative. Can I ask that? And I would have come in late in the conversation. I suspect that some of this would have been discussed already. But with regards to the Soca on the Seas initiative, can you state maybe from which grant this has been funded, and can you state how this will benefit the people of Trinidad and Tobago?
Thank you, Member. In respect of the Soca on the Seas sponsorship, the Ministry supported the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts in the launch of the event in May of 2016 in the sum of $65,000. If I can indulge you for a minute, I could just make a statement on the Soca of the Seas.
I think, yes, just before that, I think the member wanted to know from what vote, if that would have been under any of these.
The vote would have been
votes.
62 or marketing vote.
Marketing, okay.
Should I?
Any additional information would be useful.
Okay, if I could just get 1 minute, I'll make a statement on the Soca of the Seas. By letter dated April 11, 2016, the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts invited the partnership of the Ministry of Tourism in support of the Soca on the Seas project. The project was essentially a 4-day cruise on the second largest cruise liner in the Caribbean, that is Royal Caribbean. It is a cruise being organized by a private sector entrepreneur, and it departs from Miami, goes to Bahamas with 2 stops. The project proposes to showcase a wide range of soca artists and to promote Trinidad and Tobago's mix of carnival characters as well as pan and fashion to a potential 2,400 cruise passengers and 900 crew members from countries all around the world. The showcasing will take place aboard the ship as well as on the island stops, thereby extending the reach of destination branding and profiling regionally. It is expected that this exposure to a taste of Trinidad and Tobago's rich carnival culture will excite the interest of the vast population of cruisers as well as the cruise lines, thereby fostering a new appreciation of what Trinidad and Tobago has to offer as a tourism destination, and indeed engendering new business. This is projected to translate into increased visitor arrivals and spend, and to complement the other efforts being pursued by the Ministry in growing such arrivals. It is to be noted, as was said earlier, cruise arrivals to the Caribbean in excess of 25 million. The Caribbean region is the predominant cruise destination in the world, such as the appeal of the region to cruise liners. In recognition of the potential branding value to be derived, the Ministry of Tourism supported the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts in the project through the funding of the launch of the event in a sum of $65,000, which took place in May. The Ministry agreed to look at the possibilities of supporting the marketing activities for the event with the objective of encouraging widest possible reach. Following on the launch, the Ministry of Tourism reviewed the marketing options being offered and felt comfortable that the sponsorship being provided by the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts provided adequate opportunity for destination branding and customer reach. Accordingly, the Ministry of Tourism took the decision to provide no further financial support, as this was not deemed to be necessary. The Ministry continues to work very closely with our stakeholders, our partners, and all private sector investors to give tourism a pride of place in our national economic landscape, thereby increasing its contribution to foreign exchange earnings and general economic development. This sum was taken from the marketing vote.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, Madam PS, just if you could give me some assistance in terms of your question 5, the answer to question 5 on the transfers and subsidies. This is page 8, page 9 of your submission. How does the PS assess the effectiveness of these entities? And in your response, you referred to under PSIP, looking at an appendix, a matrix of certain criteria for monitoring. And that includes things like the strategic plan of the TDC. So I would like to know if there's a current strategic plan and over what period of time it covers. Where is the TDC in terms of the achievements of this strategic plan?
The TDC's strategic plan, Madam Chair, it spans the period 2012 to 2015. The Ministry is currently undertaking an initiative whereby we are in the process of developing a strategic roadmap for growth of the sector. Very recently, in January of 2016, the Ministry established a standing committee for tourism for the strategic and sustainable development of tourism in Trinidad. Such a committee existed in a different incarnation before, but the thinking now is that we would bring together high-level strategic thinkers who could advise and support the Ministry in terms of developing a strategic roadmap. And this is in consideration of the varying plans that have been prepared in the past, and in consideration of the economic times that we are in, and in consideration of the trends in the industry. The work of the committee has been moving apace. The committee comprises persons, high-level officials from varying ministries, like the Ministry of Sports, Ministry of Culture. We also have a representation from the Ministry of National Security. It is chaired by Dr. Akola Cameron, Head of Department Management Studies at the university. It has representatives from the TDC, from the Ministry of Tourism, from the Hotel Institute, from the THA, Ministry of Labor. So it's really a committee that is intended to review the plans of the past, to give consideration to the current circumstances, to give consideration to the imperative of developing tourism as an alternative sector that can take its place in the economic diversification effort of the country, and that holds significant potential for generating jobs, generating foreign exchange earnings, increasing incomes, and contributing to community development. The committee recently came up with a framework for this roadmap and met with major industry stakeholders just over 1 week ago to share the new perspective with the stakeholders and to get their buy-in into the concept of the roadmap, which will be very significantly drilled down into strategies for each area of focus. And there are 4 subcommittees that have been formed out of the standing committee, which covers the areas of marketing, product development, investment, transportation, meaning A&C, as well as business development. The business development is intended to bring the small players, community players, and other stakeholders, ensuring that they enjoy the fullest benefit of whatever returns are generated from the industry. Currently, the committee continues to work assiduously towards development of this plan, and that will inform in a very significant way the strategic plan of both the TDC and the ministry.
Okay, so currently for 2016, there exists no strategic plan.
No. But there are strategic imperatives by which they are guided.
Okay. Now, I just going back to Appendix 1, which in the submission from the ministry, these criteria, if I understand them well, these requirements are what would have been used to judge the effectiveness of the entities, both the CTO, the United Nations organization, and the TDC. Another requirement I saw is the annual financial statements and annual reports. In terms of, and you may correct me if I'm wrong, our records show that for the TDC, those financial statements have not been done from 2011 to 2015. Is that correct?
The last audited financial statements of the TDC is for the year 2012, but they are currently working on 2013 and 2014.
Okay.
In terms of the administrative report,
yes,
we have both the ministry and the TDC have sent their 2014 administrative reports to Cabinet. Those have already gone to Cabinet, and the 2015 reports have been completed and are currently under review for submission to the President.
Okay, so that in terms of, what mechanisms as the PS are available to ensure these timely reports are met? Because from my understanding, these are the gauges by which you assess the effectiveness of the entities. Mm-hmm. So while we have the Appendix 1 with a number of criteria, let's say, for instance, board minutes of the TDC 1 week following confirmation, does that apply?
Yeah, we do get board minutes
okay,
following on every meeting of the board.
And what about the monthly cash statements of operations?
We get monthly expenditure reports. Some of these reports are also submitted to the investments division.
Yes.
There are certain reports that go to the investments division, more of the financial type. The performance type reports come to the ministry, and we forward them in turn to the Ministry of Planning and Finance.
Right.
We do get the monthly reports of expenditure, which we review very carefully in keeping with to ensure their alignment to the strategic imperatives as well as their alignment to the government policy.
So that in terms of assessing the effectiveness of the TDC, could you say how that is done by the Permanent Secretary?
We do have an M&E unit in the ministry, monitoring and evaluation. We have an M&E coordinator, and he pays very close attention to reviewing these reports at the end of each month. Some of the key responsibilities of the M&E unit is that they maintain a results-based monitoring and evaluation system, including guidelines, performance indicators, methods, formats, and analytical processes for the ministry to better inform its evaluation and decision-making. That is on page 25 of the said report. The M&E unit also monitors and evaluates the TDC's projects and programs to ensure alignment with national goals and national tourism policy. We do have a national tourism policy of 2010, which remains valid. The M&E unit also reviews the performance of the PSIP projects of the TDC, and they do so along the line of financial monitoring, activity monitoring, output monitoring, and outcome monitoring, all in the objective of ensuring, as far as possible, best value for money.
Okay, so, and I might have missed it, in terms of the result-based monitoring and evaluation system used by this unit, could you give us a little detail?
Sure,
what really is involved in that?
We have the M&E coordinator here, Mr. Maraj, and he will add some more details.
Thank you, Mr. Maraj.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, PS. As PS said, one of the mandates of the unit is to develop a results-based monitoring and evaluation system, which is constructed along 4 key areas, namely financial analysis, activity and output monitoring, process and outcome evaluations, and policy and compliance. Under each specific category, we've devised indicators which guide the performance not only of the TDC but also of the ministry as well. And all of this is based on the strategic outcomes of the ministry and the TDC. And for instance, in terms of the administrative reports of the TDC or their administrative expenditure, part of Appendix 1 refers to the requirements of the State Enterprise Performance Monitoring Manual, which in effect provides a system of reporting that looks at efficiency of spend, effectiveness of spend. Besides those going to the investment division, internally, what we do is to ensure that the optimum use of resources, of expenditure, of finances, and that there's no wastage or duplication of spend. We develop certain ratios that we look at. For example, under marketing, one of the things that we gauge the effectiveness of our spend on is the average marketing expenditure to bring a visitor here versus the average spend of the visitor when it comes here. The ideal position we'd like to achieve is one goes down and one goes up, and that would speak to the effectiveness of or efficiency of our spend. So like that, there are certain indicators developed for each area that makes up the results-based system. For policy and compliance, a lot of it will be formed based on the State Enterprise Performance Manual as well as the requirements of the Exchequer and Audit Act. And we also have an internal audit unit who performs some of these functions as well. So it's a collaborative effort between internal audit, the monitoring and evaluation unit, and of course research and planning of the ministry.
Mr. Maraj, might I ask, when was the last report generated by the monitoring and evaluation unit?
Sure. Monthly, as PS said, there's a requirement for the unit to supply to the Office of the Permanent Secretary or the Office of the Deputy Permanent Secretary a report based on the review of all the reports submitted by the TDC and internally by the ministry as well as reports emanating from our meetings, from written responses requested of the TDC as well.
So the last one would have been when?
At the end of May. Sorry.
End of May?
Yes.
And were there any findings? So maybe if you could highlight any major aspect of your findings.
Sure.
And if there was any recommendation for any sort of action to take?
Sure. I deal with one that is more current in terms of our PSIP. A few months ago, we were called to a meeting with the Ministry of Planning based on our implementation rates, which were less than what it was across the rest of the public service. One of the things that the ministry, through the M&E unit, would have done was to identify where those implementation rates were slow and draw it to the attention of the PS and the DPS and identified where the clogs were and what interventions were required. Since then, based on that meeting, we've made interventions both at the ministry and at the TDC, and it has resulted in an increase in our expenditure and acceleration of the implementation of those projects. So like that, the same is done for administrative. For instance, where there are issues of expenditure that may raise questions, be it under security, janitorial, we would raise it as issues, and based on the nature of them, the ministry may intervene. There's one example of where there were duplication of security services being provided by the ministry and TDC at our beach sites, and we've streamlined that to get more effective spend and efficiency of spend.
P.S., might I ask, you have an internal audit unit also?
Yes, we do.
And what is the size of that?
Up until a couple days ago, it was 2 persons, the auditor 1 and an auditing assistant. The auditor 1 has just gone on retirement leave, so we are currently, well, we have written quite some time to service commissions to have the position filled.
So you just have the auditing assistant?
At this time, yes.
Yes. And in terms of what would have been the capacity of 2, was that, did you find that sufficient manpower to undertake the internal audit function of the ministry?
Chair, at this point in time, well, while we had the 2 persons, it was considered adequate. Prior to fiscal 2016, we used to have the lifeguard services division with us. They comprised a daily paid service of about 200 persons. They have since gone to the Ministry of National Security. We also had
Facilities management.
well, facilities management, which was like a sister entity to the lifeguard services. So that has been pretty much off the books of the ministry at this time. We also had the Zoological Society, that was with the ministry for a number of years. They were transferred to the Ministry of Agriculture in fiscal 2016, so that with the changed circumstances and the nature of the operations of the ministry, at this point, the 2 persons are considered adequate. But of course, we need to get the auditor 1 back on board.
So that even the level of expertise, apart from the manpower quantum of 2 persons, the auditor 1 function suffices for your entity?
It has over the recent past, yes.
And in terms of the TDC, who does the internal audit for the TDC?
TDC has its own internal auditors, and they have external auditors who do their financial statements as well. And of course, there's always the reports are submitted to the investment division, who also has a function of some level of monitor over the audited accounts.
And maybe I should ask this to the CEO of the TDC in terms of the audit function, in terms of personnel, how many?
Madam Chair, we have 2 individuals, internal audit manager and an assistant. In addition to that, at the board level, we also have our audit committees and various subcommittees that oversight a lot of the activities of the TDC.
Thank you. Member Duki?
Thank you, ma'am. Mention was made about a relationship or ratio between spend. So I'm interpreting that to mean how much money you spend on average to bring a visitor here and how much money the actual visitor spends here. Okay. Tell me, what is the average?
It varies by market. It depends on the nature of the nature of the strategy involved in the particular market. Sure, go ahead.
I'm good with that. So let me ask a follow-up to that. Because I'm assuming that the objective is to widen the gap, meaning reduce what it costs to bring a visitor here and to get the visitor to...
Yes.
So historically, is that gap been increasing?
I would say that if we look at the last 5 years, we were in a healthier position prior to, I would say, 2008, 2009. When the downturn in the global economy happened, it affected the disposable income of persons traveling. And so that gap, it went the other way. It narrowed in particular. There's more of a recovery in terms of the level of disposable incomes available to the traveler now, and we are seeing a revival. Our average visitor spend last year, I think, was close to 7,000 TT.
What does that mean? 7,000 TT means that's the difference between the two?
No, that is the actual visitor spend. I'm estimating.
Right. With you.
Mr. Solomon may have the correct figures.
With you.
But we've seen a recovery in terms of the number, in terms of the value of expenditure from visitors. In the year before that, I think was just about 6,000.
So it is moving in the right direction?
It is moving in the right direction. And one of the things that we are seeing an increase in is the spend of cruisers coming off the ships and shopping in the city and taking tours and so on. The ministry has a very determined focus to get the tourism dollar to trickle down more. And so as part of our baseline survey project under PSIP, we are looking at where the expenditure is happening now and to see what interventions would be required in the future to ensure that it is not just the hotels, the restaurants and so on, but artisans and other persons in the sector would benefit.
Something, Mr. Miraj.
Sure.
I write note of something you said. In terms of, you said, the average cruiser, if I understood well, you've seen that they're spending more?
Yes, and particularly
what indicators do you
so
use to assess that?
Right, the TDC does exit surveys, exit visitor spend surveys on the cruises here, and the Division of Tourism and Transportation does the same in Tobago. And so there's an exchange of information between both. This year, the research from the Division of Tourism and Transportation in Tobago suggests that that has happened there. And in fact, in Tobago, there's far greater trickle down to the persons in transport, artisans, even shops on the street. In Trinidad, we haven't achieved that just yet, but we are working towards having that trickle down effect.
So, is there any? So if I understand well, you would obtain that information based on the responses of the.
Yes.
So you do a sample.
Yes. Yes.
And is there any other mechanism to verify that or confirm what a cruiser said then?
At this stage, no, because of the way we account for tourism statistics. One of the things that we struggle with is proper data collection strategies because of the nature of the way our economy is. So that ideally, there should be a triangulation through something that perhaps the Central Statistical Office does. But at this stage, it is just based on the research of the Ministry and the Tourism Development Company. And the feedback from the visitor, yes.
Thank you, ma'am, again. I take it that one of your performance measure in your sector is the number of tourist arrivals.
Yes.
I just want to confirm something that I may or may not have heard earlier, that the figures for 2016 is trending upwards.
In the Caribbean market, I think Mr. Solomon was...
That's in the Caribbean or Trinidad and Tobago?
No, it's Trinidad and Tobago. Well, two things. The Caribbean arrivals in general have increased, but Trinidad and Tobago, one of our bigger source markets, and Mr. Solomon is more of the expert than I am here, but one of our bigger source markets historically has been the Caribbean. In 2016, we've seen a recovery based on marketing efforts and so on. It has gone up 2% as at the end of May, year to date to 2015. And interestingly, we've seen increased arrivals out of Cuba, not just for the purpose of work, but also for leisure.
Okay, so let me ask the question in this way.
Yeah.
Is the market in the Caribbean growing faster, or the growth rate in the Caribbean faster than our local growth rate?
Remember, could you just explain what you mean by our local growth rate?
The market is growing from what you're saying. So it means that there's increased visitors on a whole in the Caribbean.
Correct.
If you were to take Trinidad and Tobago out of the market and compare us with the growth rate, so let's say they are growing at 10%.
Right.
What are we growing at?
At the end of 2015, we were actually on par with the regional growth rate, which was 7%. We were at about 6.8% over 2014. Some of the markets continue to perform positively in 2016. Others, showing slight declines. Overall, though, we are looking at approximately 6% below the 2015 performance. But those numbers, those declines are coming from specific areas which bring their own specific reasons for those declines. And if I could explain.
Sure.
The Scandinavian market, for example, up to last year, there was a charter service direct from Stockholm to Tobago. And that charter ended. They pulled out of Tobago because the company itself was sold, and they opted to review their overall long-haul travel business. So they dropped quite a few destinations that they would serve long-haul, Tobago being one of them. What has happened now for consumers wishing to travel from Scandinavia to Trinidad and Tobago, they now access the air service coming out of Frankfurt. So it has caused the numbers from Germany to decline, and because less people want to be bothered, if you will, to travel on a service that is not non-stop, it's also reduced the number of Scandinavian visitors. So the Condor flight may be doing well in terms of raw numbers, but the numbers of people from those two particular markets have fallen. In an attempt to address that situation, we would have, since November of last year, we would have been in discussions with 3 European carriers who have expressed an interest in starting service to Port of Spain and Tobago. So we continue to work along those lines, and if everything can fall into place, we may be looking at new service from Europe, either winter 2016 or winter 2017.
I could.
Member Rapsiroy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question on domestic tourism. We all agree that it is important, right? How much of your allocation year to date has been used to promote domestic tourism? That's one. And two, what is your policy on domestic tourism?
I'll start from the reverse, if I may. We have identified quite a bit of receipts coming from the spate of domestic tourism, and this will be considered, visits to local sites and attractions, and of course visits from Trinidad, from Trinidad to Tobago and vice versa. In fact, when we presented those numbers recently, I think a lot of people were surprised at the level of income it develops. So we have been working in collaboration with our private sector stakeholders on the tours and transportation and accommodation sides to initially strengthen the promotion of sites and attractions and local hotel stays on both islands for the July-August period this year. But that is with a view to having it more of a year-round type outreach, so that all of the local stakeholders, all of the suppliers, almost guaranteed of year-round business, because the opportunities are there, and that is certainly one of the reasons why we continue to place a lot of attention and focus on sites and attractions which fall within the ambit of the TDC, and also working with other owners of sites and attractions and events to be more of an attraction to people resident in Trinidad and Tobago. The answer to the first question, it's approximately 12%.
And this is coming from a clear policy directive in terms of boosting domestic tourism, or is it just a strategy that is being employed by TDC?
Just a strategy.
Another question. You noted that you've been seeing that it has been contributing to the economy. Mm-hmm. Has there been a deliberate attempt to study this impact, and do you intend to embark on a study?
There has been an attempt. As a matter of fact, there is a presentation we would have done to the ministry and some of the stakeholders recently, and plans to actually share it with the wider stakeholder base within the next week.
When was it done, this study?
That would have been done over the last year and a half.
You want to share a little bit with us? Or?
Remember, I don't have those figures. Yes, we will definitely send it in writing. Yes, we can get that.
You noted that you intend to heighten your campaign for this July-August period to increase and boost the domestic tourism. What are some of the strategies you intend to use?
We would be doing a lot of activity on social media, as well as traditional print and electronic advertising, and working in concert with some of the local service providers, so the tour operators, tour guides, PTSE National Trust, and also tapping into their communication strategies and supporting those as well.
And what has been budgeted for that campaign strategy?
Yeah.
Sorry, the total amount budgeted for the campaign?
Approximately 300,000.
Approximately 300,000. Okay,
yes.
thanks.
It's called a Stay Together Away campaign that is being put on during this upcoming July and August to encourage locals to get a better appreciation of the sites and attractions, to know the country better, to develop greater pride and become better ambassadors. So it's two-pronged really. One is where we provide for hotel stays, and the other segment of it is where we develop a number of tours, promote these tours, and encourage visitation to the various sites, both in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, so Madam P.S., just following up on the local tourism, I just wanted to ask something. How are these tour operators selected? Are they selected by the ministry or the TDC? How are they selected? Both for the local tourism that you're talking about and for the foreign tourism?
In a number of ways. There is the Incoming Tour Operators Association. There is in terms of domestic, there is PTSE, which obviously provides its own transportation, but PTSE is also very fortunate to have upwards of 20 trained tour guides. They were trained at the TNT Hospitality and Tourism Institute on staff. So they are also fully equipped to provide that service. The National Trust also operates specific tours to specific sites and attractions, and they bring, with them, their own transportation and tour guiding services. On the international scale, the folks that would regularly communicate with overseas tour operators or travel agencies and so on would tend to come from the body of the TNT Incoming Tour Operators Association, as well as the sister associations in Tobago. So they would be the ones, for example, that would have contracts with international tour operators, so that international tour operator can package Trinidad and Tobago for their customers. Their customer pays that one price to them, but they do all the behind-the-scenes work with our local stakeholders. So they are not selected by the TDC. They do, however, fall into the certification process, which is governed by the Trinidad and Tobago Tourism Certification Program, TTIC, which we partner with the Bureau of Standards. That is not a mandatory certification at this stage, but that's a place that we hope to get to in the near future.
Okay, so you don't really have any sort of regulatory role or oversight in terms of standards and quality of tour operators?
Regulatory in the sense that we administer the TTIC program, but because it's not mandatory, the powers, if I can use that word, are very limited.
And in terms of, promoting some increase in the local tourism, as you say, in the holiday period, I've heard you talk about different stakeholders. Would there be any sort of intervention on your part with respect to the Port Authority, in terms of the ferry service, in terms of the air service, the airlift? Because it's one thing to be spending money on marketing local tourism, but airlift and sea carriage, what kinds of initiatives are you all invoking on that level?
Well, we do have a partnership, Madam Chair, with the Port Authority and Caribbean Airlines. I think it's limited in the sense that we can identify certain periods that may be high periods for travel, where there's a high demand for travel. But then it really becomes up to those two service providers in particular to have adequate service on the inter-island route.
But no, I only ask that in response to the fact that you may be spending money marketing local tourism.
Right.
I expect if you're spending money, you expect that there will be a return, and you may even target what level of growth you expect to match that increased expenditure. Therefore, if you're not assured of, I say, between the Twin Islands, of the carriage, would the increased expenditure be justified?
Yeah. Good question, Madam Chair. We at the end of the day would get the feedback from the different stakeholders on both islands as to whether or not they would have seen an uptick in business. But certainly for the inter-island travel, the transportation parts are very important. As you probably know, it's been a long-term bugbear for the THA and other Tobago stakeholders in particular, that supply tends to outstrip demand, or demand tends to outstrip supply for inter-island travel at the peak periods. So that, as much as we see approximately 55% of the people engaged in domestic travel or domestic tourism being Trinidadians going to Tobago. One of the other objectives of the program is to increase visitation to other sites and attractions within Trinidad. And continue to work with the transportation providers to ensure that there is adequate service.
That would just be like PTSC, or that would also be small individual operators?
Those would be PTSC and other operators. The tour operators, the Tourism Transportation Service Association, which brings their fleet of taxis as well. Tour guides who access transportation services to carry out their tours and so on.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Roy?
just to add, Madam Chair, just to add one thing.
Sorry, Madam. Yes.
The Standing Committee, one of the subcommittees of the Standing Committee, which is the Airlift Committee, they also have charge for looking at airlift as well as airlift between the islands, Trinidad and Tobago, so that we well appreciate that there has been a challenge with that route, and the subcommittee, airlift subcommittee, will be looking into that and discussing with the relevant entities to see how we could address that problem.
And it's not that I'm trying to put airlift and sealift at your doorstep. I'm just wondering, whether increasing a drive should come before ensuring that people can get there. That's basically, and I'm saying if you can't ensure that, maybe you may need to reconsider how much more you pump into that drive. Is basically that
And then there's
that has
the
been
other
engaged in
issue.
my mind.
Sorry, there's the other issue of exposing the nationals to varying sites across the country and the value this creates in terms of placing their experiences, for instance, on social media, the marketing value and the promotional value that brings with it. In addition to which, of course, we try to encourage locals to stay in local hotels, and there's the foreign exchange earnings aspect of it as well. So there are returns that go beyond what comes to us immediately.
Member Roy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just reflecting on the response Mr. Solomon gave in terms of product development, and I started reflecting on the numbers, the amount we're putting into marketing. So we're pumping a lot of money into marketing, but I'm not really seeing the same level of investment in product development. What is your policy on product development? That's one. And two, what strategies you intend to employ to ensure that we have value for money in terms of product development?
In respect of product development, we at the Ministry of Tourism and the TDC acknowledge fully that it is an area that we have to pay increasing attention to. As a matter of fact, from the CTO's perspective and the international perspective, the Caribbean product, which is beyond the Trinidad and Tobago product, needs to be refreshed and revitalized in many ways, given the competition that is out there beyond the region and the very discerning nature of new travelers. The Trinidad and Tobago product is a very unique one in the Caribbean. We are not typically a sun, sea, sand destination, but we are very differentiated in many respects by virtue of the strengths of our heritage, culture, music, cuisine, eco, etc. The uniqueness of product development is that with respect to tourism, it involves every other ministry, every other public sector agency, every other organization. It involves regional corporations, because there's a need and a requirement for agencies outside of the Ministry of Tourism to develop the product, the different dimensions of the product, whether it be soft product or hard product, so that they can be strengthened and be more suitable for good marketing.
Okay. Sorry. My mind tends to race a lot. Do you have a product development manager?
TDC, yeah, TDC does.
You have a product development manager?
We do have a product development unit, and that we don't have a general manager in there, but our sites and facilities manager undertake a lot of the activities with regard to product development. I must say, in terms of our stock and inventory of possible and products and sites, we have an inventory, I think, of over 200. A study was done, research was done for both Trinidad and Tobago. Also, the regional corporations also, excuse me, undertook their own research, and they also came up with over 400 inventory of over 400 possible sites that deem that we could look at that new product to develop to attract tourism. But in addition to Madam Permanent Secretary's talk about Trinidad and Tobago provide a different type of product, she mentioned a range of them, but we also have a lot of sports and tourism products that we look at and are looking to develop. So we do have a stock, but we do have to look after what exists right now, and a lot of our budget in terms of our PSIP goes towards the maintenance and continued operations of the sites that are under our charge.
Member Budo.
Just to follow up on the issue of certification that the chairman raised. Whenever I travel, of course, if you want to participate in an activity or do a site visit, you're very concerned about safety. That's uppermost in your mind. I just wanted to be clear, do we have a process in place then to certify tour operators? Perhaps, Mr. Solomon, I know you alluded to some maybe deficiencies in the process.
So the TTIC program, Trinidad and Tobago Tourism Industry Certification Program, that is the program run in concert with the Bureau of Standards that seeks to do that. I would step out on a limb and say, unfortunately, it is not mandatory at this stage, and that is something that we are working towards. Getting it legislated that all tourism service providers have to be certified. But currently, the TTIC program, which spans transportation, tour operation, and accommodation, there are people who subscribe to it. There are a lot of private sector members who subscribe to it, but it is not mandatory.
So I go down, sorry, Madam Chair, I go down to the Caroni Swamp and I want to take a boat, and there are several operators present there vying for my business. Is there some sort of way that I as a visitor can recognize a bona fide or certified tourism operator?
Yes.
At the current time?
Currently, anybody who is certified under the TTIC program is so branded. Their businesses or transportation services are so branded.
And they will carry some visible evidence?
Yes.
In the form of a badge or something like that?
Correct.
Okay. Sorry, Madam Chair, can I? If I may just go back to Mr. Maraj, you had provided an answer earlier in response to a question by Member Duki about the average expenditure of about $7,000 by a cruise passenger. And
no, that's average visitor spend for visitors through air.
Okay, all right. But you made the point that in Tobago, there's a trickle-down effect.
Right.
But in Trinidad, there wasn't the same. Can you explain, or are there reasons why that may be so?
Perhaps one of the reasons is the way the cruise season is set up. The size is also part of it, as well as where cruise visitors arrive on our port. For instance, in Tobago, I was told, based on my discussions with the Division of Tourism and Transportation, that visitors who come off the ship are able to access tours, they're able to go to the beaches, go to the waterfalls. The artisans are properly organized for the cruise passengers to purchase items from them, and there's a greater collaboration among the industry stakeholders in Tobago. In Trinidad, unfortunately, we may not have arrived at that spot just yet in terms of how we put together our cruise packages and how we market it, and in terms of purchase from our cruise passengers. So while we do have cruise visitors going to places like Maracas, going to the true Port of Spain to shop and so on, we don't usually get cruise passengers visiting other areas of Trinidad in particular, whereas in Tobago there seems to be a greater ability for cruise passengers to go to different areas of Tobago. And perhaps one is size and geography, and two, I think part of it is the way we organize ourselves as well. And so that is something both the ministry and the TDC are looking to improve, so that in upcoming cruise seasons that we generate greater spend through them.
If I may, just on that, to follow up then.
Sure.
So what exactly happens then when a cruise ship lands in Port of Spain? Does the TDC, does the Ministry of Tourism have something in place to meet and greet these passengers and
Sure.
offer them the endless possibilities that Trinidad has to offer, and Tobago, of course?
Yes, I'd ask Mr. Solomon to speak more to it, but there is, at the Tourism Development Company, a cruise specialist who arranges the entire cruise season and who puts in a lot of effort into that. I'll ask Mr. Solomon to provide you with further details.
Yes. When a line visits Port of Spain, there are a number of tours that the passengers embark on. Because of the length of stay of the ship in port, there is a bit of a limit in terms of where they can visit and for how long. So, for example, a Caroni Bird Sanctuary tour, a lot of the times is a difficult one to facilitate because the lines tend to leave at the same time that the scarlet ibis are coming in. But there are a number of tours that are managed by members of the Incoming Tour Operators Association, as well as the TNT Tourism Transport Services Association. There are also moves afoot to sort of increase the amount of tour options available. So, for example, have a wider array of entertainment options. So those discussions are currently ongoing, and they have to be sort of in a sort of tripartite sort of way with TDC in terms of getting the word out there to the travel agents that sell cruise, in North America and Europe, but more importantly with the shore excursion managers on the cruise ships, with the cruise lines, and the local service providers. So you can't just turn up. You can't just turn up and offer a tour. It's very regulated, and of course, for all of the issues of liability and so on, everything must be agreed to and signed off on by the cruise line with the local service providers.
If I may, just one follow-up. So in that regard, can I assume then that passengers on a cruise ship prior to embarkation, prior to arrival at the port, would have the option perhaps of, booking these tours beforehand?
Yes.
And planning their short stay in Trinidad?
Yes, that is actually what
optimally.
happens. That is actually what happens.
That happens.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
If there are any other questions, if there are no other questions on transfers and subsidies, could we move ahead? Okay, and if I just wanted to ask in terms of Madam PS, I'm on to consolidated fund, and on page 13 of your submission, I'm seeing a number of projects, which some of them appear to me to be multi-year projects, like the tourism sites and attractions upgrade. Is that a multi-year?
It is a vote that will go year after year, but
Yes.
the projects within it will differ.
Yeah, but in terms of the projects you've identified here, both under the ministry and under the TDC, could you say which are multi-year projects?
Tourism sites and attractions, for instance.
Yes. That's multi-year.
Well, multi-year in the sense that you may have projects within the vote that will finish in a year, 2 years, or 3 years, as the case may be.
Right,
You
okay.
move on to another project.
Yes, I understand.
The cruise tourism initiative is a a
Multi-year?
one-time project.
One time?
Because of the nature of the,
So its project start date was when?
that is a fiscal 2016 project.
And so it started in 2016 and it will finish in 2016?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, yes?
Development of a beach master plan, those funds were cut.
Yes.
Tourism baseline survey, that started in fiscal 2015, and it is expected to be completed in fiscal 2016.
Right.
ICT, this is a ministry project that is, they're specific, the project for this year is specific to 2016.
But
Next
it
year there will
is
be another project.
ICT improvement
Right,
and
that's
development is an ongoing thing?
It's an ongoing thing, but
Yes.
different projects.
Okay.
The other projects fall under TDC. We have the beach enhancement projects.
Yes.
There are 5 facilities that are vested under the TDC.
Yes.
The 4 beaches, Maracas, Las Cuevas, Manzanilla, Vecini, and the Labre Pichle.
Yes.
They are all vested under TDC, and there are improvements, upgrades that take place each year.
Each year?
And sometimes you have expansion works as well.
Okay, so it's ongoing?
That's correct.
The improvement works are ongoing?
Yeah.
Yes. The certification of tourism program operators, that's an ongoing educational or certification project?
Yes, Chair.
Not so? Yes.
Yeah.
The environmental conservation green globe awareness?
That as well, because it relates to international eco-labeling.
Okay.
And they have different beaches, for instance, that will be looked at from time to time.
From time to time?
Yeah.
Okay, the National Tourism Quality Service Improvement Program?
That relates to a program we call STAR,
Yes.
Service, Training, Attitude, Respect, that's the acronym.
Yes.
It relates to a program of improvement of quality service, customer service.
Right.
Among varying segments of the industry.
Right.
Be it hotels, different aspects of operations of hotels, tour operators, tour guides, taxi operators, airport, immigration staff, customs staff.
Yeah.
It's a program that is being rolled over a period of many years.
Right. Okay, so I just wanted to ask, I've seen a couple of the call circulars for maybe 2-3 years, and I've seen consistently a sort of prohibition with respect to projects that, I hear it's term rollover projects or multi-year projects, which should be, from my understanding, should not come as a project under DP Consolidated Fund. So I wanted to find out, in terms of these projects that you have identified that are multi-year, ongoing, rolling over, have you recognized among these any projects which should be excluded from capital expenditure funding?
Madam Chair, we have had a discussion with the Ministry of Planning, and they have advised that in cases where we have projects that relate mainly to ongoing refurbishment, maintenance type work, that it should really be under recurrent, while if there are significant upgrade or expansion works, those can be retained under the PSIP.
Okay, so so it appears that what the advice you've been given is different to what is in the call circular?
No, it is pretty much the same, in that if we have projects that span a specific period,
yes,
they are deemed project type for the PSIP.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have, for instance, let's say we're doing expansion work at one of the facilities at Vecini, it means that if you, for instance, put up another floor,
mm-hmm,
it would be a project
yes,
that could probably span a year or 2 years, as the case may be, and that would qualify for PSIP. But if it's ongoing maintenance works,
right, so
we should move it from
maintenance,
PSIP and put
yes,
it to recurrent.
So none of these, let's take for instance the certification of tourism program operators. Should that be under PSIP?
From the call circular and from the advice we have been getting from planning, it should be a recurrent project.
Okay, so so back to my original question, are there any of these that are listed here under consolidated fund that in your view should be removed and then placed under recurrent? And if so, which are those?
Yes,
that you would
Chair.
expect to see in next fiscal under recurrent?
The programs that relate to training, for instance, the Quality Service Improvement Program, that should be one for recurrent. Even the beaches, the component of that relates to maintenance works, ongoing recurrent maintenance works, those works should also be under recurrent. If there are capital works to be undertaken at these sites, they can be retained as PSIP projects.
Yes. But the particular capital works will be a project with a start date and a finish date. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
TTIC, certification of tourism program operators, that should also be recurrent by the nature of what it is.
And what about the cruise tourism initiative?
The cruise tourism initiative for 2016,
Yeah.
it is a specific project type project for fiscal 2016. So
Yes.
it's intended to start in fiscal 2016 and finish in fiscal 2016.
All right. And your ICT?
The ICT, this relates to upgrade in the Ministry of Tourism. It is specific to certain projects, like SharePoint, for instance. It really has a recurrent component to it because it relates as well to upgrades of phone system, replacement of computer, laptops, items like that.
Right.
So in several of them, there would be a recurrent component that could be transferred to PS recurrent.
Yeah.
And in some cases, there may be a project type element to it, which could be retained at the PSIP.
All right. So I guess the necessary adjustments will be made.
Yes, Chair.
All right. Thank you. Member Duki?
Thank you, ma'am, once more. I'm looking at your ICT program. I just want some clarification, please. You stated the project description and went on to the project outcomes. Are these outcomes attained, or are you referring here to expected outcomes? Now, this is on page 32, I believe, of your submission.
Remember, is it the ICT technology program at 1 million? Is that it?
The information and communication technology.
Yeah, okay. That's a ministry program for fiscal 2016. There are several components to it, one of which is the ministry's website upgrade. It's currently being developed, contracted out and being developed at a cost of $151,000. It is really making current a website that has been 3 years old and pretty much dated. So it's been redesigned.
So this is a website initiative?
A website, the ministry's website.
Because mentioned here is one of the aspects of your description has to do with integration into the iGovernment backbone. I don't know if you're on the same page.
Member, from my information.
The objective of the project is to modernize and develop the ministry's information and communication systems.
But in respect of the website, it would be like the ministry's information system.
Right.
Right?
Okay, but I'm looking at, if you look at project outcomes, I don't know if you're seeing what I'm speaking about.
Yeah, I'm here with you.
Those outcomes are the projected outcomes, or are you saying that this is what you have accomplished? So it's projected.
Projected outcomes for 2016.
Okay.
So, for instance, under the project, we have upgraded website.
And this project is 20%.
The upgraded website is, percent.
It says percentage completion to date 20%.
As at February 2016.
Okay.
So since advanced.
It is much more advanced
It
now.
has advanced since then. So, actually, the website is
So
expected.
what
it's expected to
percentage
be
would you
completed
say?
in August.
So it would be completed on time?
Yeah.
All right, I just wanted to clarify that. And if
There's another project within that board that speaks to SharePoint platform. It's upgrading from SharePoint in the ministry from 2010 version to 2013 version. The intent of which is to create a document management system, more particularly for our records and cabinet notes storage. This is at an estimated cost of $300,000.
And I'm interpreting what you say to mean that by the end of August, these things will be delivered, and you will begin to maximize the value that you will get from your investment.
Yes, member.
Right. Thank you very much. And if I go on to your tourism baseline survey project or program, you identified the phases, phase 1 to 5. And earlier on, we were talking about data collection. And I'm wondering if we are prepared to engage in, using the term loosely, the right type of activities to ensure that you capture the right data set that you want. How are you going to go about doing that?
Mr. Maraj will give you more information.
Thank you, member. The baseline survey was predicated on the need to collect, as you said, proper data sets. As I indicated earlier, one of the things we've struggled with in the tourism sector, based on the factor of how the economy was previously structured, is that tourism was never set aside for its own particular data collection strategy. So we've had unique cases where, for instance, the Central Statistical Office will ask us what are the primary numbers with respect to employment in tourism, information which was previously not at hand. The Tourism Baseline Survey seeks to collect data in key categories of visitor expenditure, employment, training and skills, and there's one other, it slips me now. But in terms of how we execute, there's a international visitor expenditure component that started in September of 2015 and will be completed in August of 2016 in Trinidad. And in Tobago, discussions are ongoing for the execution of an international visitor spend it was scheduled for July to June next year, as well as a domestic component of it. Earlier, Member Roy was asking about value in domestic tourism, and against that backdrop, this program was aimed at putting up value to the contribution of domestic tourism.
I'm asking in the context of what you said earlier on, because I got the impression, I could be wrong, that when you gave the $7,000 figure,
right,
you may not have been willing to commit to generalizing that as an accurate figure. And I'm wondering now, if you have data that is not accurate, you're going to end up making decisions that.
Right. So
I'm just asking a question.
You're right.
To ensure that there are systems in place and techniques in place to ensure that you collect the right set of data.
So the way the visitor expenditure component is set up is based on a set methodology that looks at the pattern of arrivals in 2015, and the sample, which is 40,000, is based along different markets, US, UK, based on the percentages. We do have at the airport trained enumerators. The project is guided by a project coordinator at the airport. We ensure that through proper monitoring that there's no, for want of a better term, filling out of the surveys in terms of because you have to do a certain number, you do that. So it is properly monitored. The Monitoring and Evaluation Officer of the Ministry of Tourism is charged with the responsibility to ensure that there are no discrepancies and so on. At the end of August, we'll have 12 months of data. We are on target to achieve 35,000 completed face-to-face interviews with departing visitors, and it will give us the opportunity to determine how does the tourism dollar trickle down. The 7,000 figure that I alluded to earlier was based on a survey of departing visitors that was done by the Central Statistical Office. Our concerns with that is that it was done periodically, every 2 months, so that in terms of referencing visitors spent per month, and for instance, for your key periods of the year, you might have Heritage Festival in Tobago. In Trinidad, you might have Easter and different festivals.
So you're saying it was done during those key periods?
Yeah, the baseline survey is done for over a 12-month period, so it captures all key festivals in Trinidad, and the intention is that the same will be done in Tobago. Discussions are ongoing for the execution of that in Tobago.
So you're saying that when that data was collected, maybe, I'm just saying, maybe it was collected at a season when people spend more money.
It could be, yes, because
Therefore,
Carnival.
The information could be skewed.
Yes, I would say so because of the fact that they always collect carnival data, whichever month it is, and then every 2 months.
And generalize it.
Yeah, after that.
But I'm only asking the question because to emphasize the importance of collecting.
Marketing, yes.
Yeah,
And so.
And that goes on to the second phase, which talks about recruiting and training to ensure that those who are collecting. So I'm not going to drill on that anymore.
Right.
I'm going to ask one more question. It relates to a STAR program. And you indicated that you would have trained about 1,500 trainees or employees within the sector. How do you measure the outcome of that or the benefit of that training as it relates to the performance of these employees on the job?
Right. I'll speak to one particular instance. The STAR program is under the Tourism Development Company, and they have charge for executing. In terms of measuring performance, in 2010 and 11, one of the components of the survey of the pattern visitors done by the Central Statistical Office, it captures visitor responses. One of the questions relate to challenges that they face in Trinidad. One of the major challenges at the time was customer service from immigration and customs officials. The Tourism Development Company, in its one of the early phases of the STAR program, initiated training with members of the Immigration Division and Customs. And in the exit surveys of 2013, the number of complaints regarding the attitude and service of immigration officers and custom officers declined tremendously. And it was a direct result of the intervention made through STAR. So like that, other programs, other institutions that would access the STAR program they will face similar type of training, and I anticipate the results would be the same. There was a mystery shopper component to the STAR project, which is, I don't think it continues anymore, but the intention is that STAR will be expanded to other service providers within the industry.
Okay, that's within the industry, because my other question had to do, because I'm getting the sense that this is a program that is delivering value, and you are probably becoming somewhat of an expert in providing this type of training to enhance service delivery.
Right.
Is there a business development opportunity to offer this to other sectors outside? If you are becoming an expert, in this particular area, from a marketing and a business development.
Yeah, I think that is the intention, but I'll ask Mr. Chin to elaborate more.
Yes, member. The STAR program is, as I say, is one of our STAR within the TDC. And the training aspect of it has expanded even to some of the ministries, like the Ministry of Public Administration. So we've worked with some of those organizations. And we also include like the Airports Authority. And we work very closely with the CTO in putting forward a lot of those quality aspect of training with the Hospitality Assured program from the CTO. In fact, the CTO had approached us to also work with them in expanding throughout the region. And yes, the whole aspect of I don't want to say commercialize it, but let it, well, from my perspective, I'd like to see it. And we're making moves to make sure it's self-sufficient rather than depending on subventions as opposed, because it could be a very good self-sustaining program. And in fact, I've made the first move that participants in our organizations, and because we also supply things like the lunches while we're doing all these programs, so everybody can contribute towards that. But yes, I'm looking at moving the program forward to be self-sustainable and revenue earning, so then it progresses and become very effective, as most of the products that we're looking for in tourism to be self-sustainable.
Thank you.
Member Budo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go back to the STAR program. You did mention that the immigration officers are involved. Is this a seasonal thing, or is it an ongoing process? Because I wouldn't have thought so, based on my own experiences coming into the country.
Yes, member. It will be outgoing because, sometimes organizations say, we want to do another one of the program again because we have a new group of people coming in, or we want refresher courses. And of course, we're very open to the organizations and working very closely with them.
And I would add that based on the baseline survey that is going on now at the airport, we do get feedback from departing visitors that still there are cases where they may not have been treated in a manner that they felt comfortable with, and those reports are passed on to the TDC. So there is an attempt to continue doing training until we reduce the number of complaints down to a very minimum, almost zero.
Is it a formal arrangement between Immigration and Ministry of Tourism, or is it optional?
With respect to accessing STAR, it's optional.
Yeah. Yeah, just one more. But regards to the pitch lake at La Brea, if I may just ask, it's a very historic site, and I believe it's a site that is perhaps currently underutilized in terms of visitors because of infrastructural issues and so on. Would you care, Madam PS, so CEO, to give us an update on what the plans are for upgrading that site?
I would ask our manager of sites and facilities to expand a little bit on the La Brea and what we're doing right now.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. The La Brea facility was created for the community of La Brea. So what we presently have is in terms of tour guides from La Brea that take the visitors on tours to the Pitch Lake. We want to expand the project because we have a problem in terms of with touting, so we are working with the other stakeholders surrounding the area. And we have submitted in terms of World Heritage Sites. The Pitch Lake is one of them. So we are working with the relevant stakeholders in terms of bring that to pass, in terms of let it be a substantial site in Trinidad and Tobago.
Currently, I may be mistaken because I haven't been there for a little while, but in terms of infrastructural upgrades, is anything planned in terms of easy accessibility to the site itself?
Yes, sir. As one of the features of our site, we're trying to make it accessible to everyone, whether you have a disability or not. So presently, we have constructed a ramp up to the museum in La Brea, and we have revitalized the museum, so that will be reopening shortly. And also, we are in terms of increasing the security at the site because of the pilfering that occurs. So we are making it present, and we want to expand in terms of the parking facilities for visitors and security. So we have been working with the La Brea Police, and in terms of they have been very good in terms of helping us and supporting us in terms of the security to the visitor. So it has changed tremendously in terms of the income for the tour operators that are operating from the village halls.
I'll pay a visit soon. And if I may, one more question, Madam. As you mentioned, security, and of course that's a big issue, and it relates, of course, not only to visitors but to domestic tourism as well. It's a very important factor. Many of us would like to visit our own facilities, but we are concerned about security with the current crime. And I note that your allocation under tourism, safety and security is $500,000. So the question, first of all, is do you consider this adequate in terms of what you're hoping to achieve in terms of additional security for all of these potential tourism sites?
Every year, sir, we do a needs assessment. For Genesis is in terms of what we call a visitor relations management system, in terms where it would be beneficial for both foreign and in terms of local visitors. So out of this is the Genesis has come the visitor relation management system. But on our site at the Tourism Development Company at Maracas, Las Cuevas, Vesani and La Brea, we have our own security service that once you reach the site, we make it safe for the visitors. But coming towards the site, we cannot guarantee that we are in terms of dependent upon the police, who we are working closely with in terms of the security.
All right. That's one more question. In terms of the CCTV installations, can you indicate currently which sites those would be available or currently installed?
The program we are rolling out to all our sites. Presently it is on hold at Maracas because of the work at Maracas. So it will be done in terms of at Las Cuevas, Manzanilla, Vesini, and Labrie. So there are some components of it existing already, but we want to upgrade it so that we have 24-hour coverage, and in terms of that it will be feed into the TDC, so that it will be in terms of independent of who is operating at the site.
And these CCTVs will be connected to police stations, for example, or how would they be monitored?
Our intention first is that to be able to acquire the data, and then in terms of the distribute it to the police stations. So that is eventually where we'd like to go.
Madam Pierce, I just want to ask, this tourism safety and security, this is also an ongoing, should this be PSIP or should this be recurrent?
For 2016 and perhaps 2017, it is a project type in the sense that there are two components to it. VRMS, which is the Visitor Relations Management System, so it requires setting up of a system. And then there's the other side of it, which is a tourism-oriented policing unit, referred to as TOPS, one of which was recently introduced in Tobago, and we are trying to emulate that in Trinidad. Once they are set up and they become operational, then the operational costs will be recurrent.
Right, thank you very much, Member Webster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at page 15 of your submission, and there are a number of projects listed under tourism, the ministry itself, and TDC, and releases, expenditure. I noticed for the ministry side that expenditure is less than releases, so I'm assuming that you're spending what you know you have to spend. However, under TDC, total releases $96,000. Total expenditure, $316,586.50. Could somebody please explain this?
Okay, we do have explanations, but just to advise that these figures are now updated as at the end of May. Mr. Maraj, who monitors the spend, will give you more.
Continues where you have limited releases, but expenditure way above releases?
No, no, ma'am, it does not. What has happened in the past, TDC has experienced challenges in the past in terms of approvals of their projects at board level. And for the last 2 years, within the last quarter of each fiscal year, funds were released and projects were started, but they weren't completed before the end of the fiscal year, so that the unspent releases remained on their books. The projects, however, were eventually completed, and in this submission, some of that expenditure was recorded here. What we've since done is restructure the reports to have a supplemental report as outlined in the State Enterprise Performance Manual, which accounts for those unspent releases. I think is in the value of about 7.4 million, of which 5 million has already been spent on those projects completed. And the current year fiscal report is done separately. So I'll just give you an update quickly of where we are in terms of TDC and the expenditure. In terms of project E011, which is the incentive Trinidad and Tobago hotel and guest room stock, they have releases in the amount of 1.31 million, expenditure of $534,911, commitments of $17,286. With respect to the STAR program, there are releases. Sure.
While you've given us that, because you've given us the update.
Yes.
Could you also give us the percentage completion? Because remember.
Certainly.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll give you these, and Mr. Leland, Mr. Dennis has the completion reach, right? For STAR, which is the National E017, the Tourism Quality Service Improvement, there are releases of 140,000. No expenditure to date. Commitments, there are commitments that will eventually come. There are projects before the board that will be approved in the shortest possible time. I think the board met today, but I'm not sure whether those projects were approved. Yes.
So that will be done in fiscal 2016?
Yes, the intention is that those
start and completed?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes. The Maracas Beach Community Tourism Initiative, No expenditure to date. Commitments of $1,973,221.87. And this includes emergency sewer treatment works at the Marcus site as well, within the fishing village as well. E021 Las Cuevas Beach Enhancement Project. Expenditure to date, $52,322. Commitments of $1,443,293.59. Manzanilla Beach Improvement Project, E023. Expenditure $160,000. Commitments of $1,773,325.13. Vecini Beach Facility Upgrade Project, E025. Expenditure of $333,051. There are commitments of $887,216. Within this project, we would require environmental funds. Sure, sorry.
May I please get to them right in?
Sure. No.
Well, I mean, in any event, it will go on the record.
Because I'm also asking for the releases, but he's calling the expenditure and the commitment, but I didn't get the release.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will give you. I'll give you the releases. I'm sorry. So I'll go back to National Tourism Quality. I gave you the first one, which was incentive upgrade. It was 1.31. For National Tourism Quality, is 140,000 in releases. Maracas Community Tourism Initiative, 900,000 releases. Las Cuevas Beach Enhancement, 175,000 releases. Manzanilla Beach Improvement, 525,000 releases. Vecini, releases of 997,000. Expenditure of $333,051. Commitments of $887,216. And we require environment here of roughly $221,000, which we will apply for through Ministry of Finance. La Brea Pitch Lake, which is E027, releases of $687,000. Expenditure of $470,780. Commitments of $315,347.50. Certification of Tourism Program Operators, which is TTIC, E031, releases in the amount of $310,000. Expenditure of $167,672. Commitments of $12,123. E033, which is Environmental Conservation, releases of $500,000. Expenditure of $355,366. Commitments of $38,539. Tourism Safety and Security, E035, releases of $125,000. No expenditure or commitments to date. The total expenditure of the projects under the Tourism Development Company as at yesterday, $2,074,102. Commitments in the amount of $6,460,352.09. With expenditure and commitments combined, $8,534,454.09. Too fast?
Do you have that, member? Yes.
Oh, it is not. It is not the same because of the fact of the supplemental report, which separated previous year unspent releases with this year releases. Yes, we are.
Madam Pierce, just help me. Could unspent releases from one fiscal year be held by the TDC and applied to another year?
It is not something that has happened at ministry levels, but it seems to be a unique feature with state enterprises.
Okay, is that within the regulatory framework? I know you might be saying it's a unique occurrence. I want to know if it is within the regulatory framework.
I would think not, but we have brought this to the attention of Ministry of Planning and Finance, and we have appropriately sought to deal with it. And it is not expected to recur from here on.
But would not have been something that would have been picked up over the years by your internal audit, your monitoring and evaluation, and some sort of recommendation and corrective action being made from, I mean, when I look at your appendix and all your policies and your matrices and your reporting mechanisms and all of that.
Right. So
Okay? If it would appear to me if those were functioning, some of what we're hearing wouldn't be occurring.
it was picked up, Madam Chair, and it's for that reason we sought a meeting with the Ministry of Finance in early 2015, February 2015, I think it was. Unfortunately, we've had no direction from the Ministry of Finance Investments Division on how they treat with an issue like that. What we were told is that once the funds were allocated for specific activities under a project, that we could complete those projects, those activities under the projects, and a supplemental report be submitted as outlined in the State Enterprise Performance Manual. One of the things we've asked about is, for instance, there's a project on the books that is no longer there, and there's about $100,000 in unspent releases. We've asked for some guidance from the investment division on how we treat with that. To date, we've not yet been given a response. So it was recognized, and we've sought to treat with it, but it requires some directive from the Ministry of Finance through the investment division.
Right, and just really for us to keep the trend, thanks, Mr. Maraj. I think Mr. Dennis is supposed to give us an idea of percentage completion.
Yes, ma'am. Could I go by sites for you, as I have them listed?
Just a minute. Under you, Mr. Dennis, you would just be dealing with like Maracas Community, Tourism, Las Cuevas, and so on. Would you be dealing with also incentive upgrade hotels and the STAR program?
Yes.
All? Yes, so if you could go by sites in accordance to how the projects are, it'll be easier for us to follow. If you go,
Yes, ma'am.
if you look at page 15 of your response, and if you can give us in that order, it will be easier for us to follow.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
E011, that is 30% completed. (017). That's not.
I could just help you, Mr. Dennis. If
TNT.
If in addition to, or it might be easier for us to get project name
Okay, ma'am.
than project number.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
That's E011, TNT Hotel and Guest Room Stock Upgrade Incentive Project. That's 30% completed. 017, National Tourism Quality Service Improvement Program. That's ongoing and is 5% completed based on the allocation for this year. E019, Maracas Beach Community Tourism Initiative. I have an updated. That is 20% completed, but presently before the board we have two significant projects. That is in terms of the play park and also in terms of the moorings for the assistance for the fishermen, so it will be more significantly than the 20%. E021, that's Las Cuevas Beach Enhancement Project. That's ongoing, is 20% completed. E023, Manzanilla Beach Facade Improvement Project. That is 20% completed. Why those numbers are so low is because the significant projects are over $1 million, so we had to do public tender of those. So those will be in terms of awarded this week. So it will carry up in terms of the accomplishments. The Vesani Beach Facility Upgrade Project. Well, I could tell you this is beyond 50%. It's about 70% completed. The Labre Pitch Lake E027. That also is about 60% completed. E031, the Certification of Tourism Project and Operators, that's TTEC. That's beyond about 30% completed. E033, Environmental Conservation and Blue Flag, that is 50% completed. E035, Tourism Safety and Security Project, that is about 20% completed.
So thank you, Mr. Dennis. So in terms of these projects being completed in fiscal 2016, some of them have still very low rates of percentage completion, but still the expenditure has gone up significantly because based on the report as of February, lots of them were in the 0 to 25% of completion, but with very low expenditure. In all the cases, the expenditure has gone up significantly, but still very low percentage completion, which I think was part of the job of Mr. Maraj, if I understood well, in getting things kick-started, and he reported that there was a great improvement. So how do these things measure up?
Okay.
Let's see if I take, for instance, if I remembered well, the Tourism Safety and Security Project, which is the last one.
Yeah, so maybe that's not a good example based on, I'll tell you why.
Mr. Maraja, I think I heard a lot of not so good examples in the figures being called here by Mr. Dennis.
Right, the tourism safety and security, one of the key components of that project was the visitor relations management system. Based on the discussions that took place between the ministry and TDC, it was felt that because of the importance of the project and the seriousness of the outcomes that are related to the project, that it should be pitched as a separate project under our PSIP estimates in fiscal 17. So that has been done. So the project is down to one component within it. As I said, the TDC experienced challenges in terms of projects being approved by the board, and a lot of the awards would have happened late May, early June. So that while you'd see hefty commitments as of today, many of those projects, especially like the beach projects, are 8 to 10 week projects. Some of them are already, as Mr. Dennis said, 50 to 60% completed. So we do anticipate that by the end of August, that the commitments will be reduced and our expenditure will be a lot more, and that our implementation rates as a result will be much higher. So we are working assiduously. I would say here that our minister did indicate to our PSIP committee that we would our meetings will stay fortnightly and not monthly until we improve that. Our meeting with the Ministry of Planning, we were, for want of a better term, raked over the coals for bad implementation rates, but it was as a result of the challenges we faced.
Thank you. Might I ask PS what systems you all have in place for detecting fraud, and in terms of what consequential action is taken?
In respect of detecting fraud, we are guided by the Internal Audit Division, who prepare monthly reports and give indicators of any challenges or risks that they may see. If at any time we are so advised, we take the required action of investigating further, and if necessary, take it to the authorities that be.
Have there been any recent cases of any fraud being detected either on the TDC side or the ministry side?
No, Chair, nothing within recent times.
Okay, thank you very much. And just before we go, again, with respect to your mechanisms for control, in terms of in reading the Auditor General's report, there were instances reported of no evidence of stale-dated checks being voided. Has any step been taken to prevent such occurrences in fiscal 2016?
We had a Treasury system audit following on that particular report, and Treasury reported it in August 15, and they did make a number of recommendations in terms of strengthening the controls, the procedures, and the policies of the accounting department, in terms of separation of functions, in terms of more regular and more detailed registers being kept. And by virtue of those controls and procedures which have been implemented, we have smoothened operations significantly.
So that Treasury audit and the recommendations would have also taken into account the contravention of Regulation 65, 2 and 3 of the Financial Regulation, which was a contravention reported in the 2014 Auditor General's report?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, so that so things like a deposit vouchers.
Yeah, we would have
and
made
all
corrections.
of those corrections. And therefore this should be picked up by internal audit in their monthly reports.
That's correct.
And if I follow you well, there has been compliance both on the ministry side
there has
and the TDC side with the financial regulations.
Yes, ma'am.
So we shouldn't be seeing that in the Auditor General's report for
Certainly.
2016. Thank you. Member Duki.
Moving on to infrastructure. I would like to have a status report, if I could use that term, in relation to the Maracas Beach Facility Improvement Program. And in doing so, I want you to tell us if we had gotten value for money thus far.
Member Chair, Maracas Improvement Project. That upgrade project dates back to about 2009. There was a termination of the project in 2010-2011. The project was reconsidered, and it was again restarted in May of 2015 by virtue of a cabinet approval. The new project had a cost figure of $120 million, inclusive of VAT. The contract was awarded in June 2015, the project managers being CISL, Community Improvement Services Limited, our engineering consultants being LYP, Leong and Partners. Having been awarded in June 2015, it was expected to be finished in January 2016. There was a subsequent extension of the finish date to March 2016. At the time the contract was awarded, there were mobilization fees paid in the amount of $25 million to cover mobilization as well as final design fees and project management fees. The $25 million were broken down into payments to the contractor, that is Calco Limited, LYP, and CISL.
What's the breakdown like?
Calco would have been $21.5 million, Leong and Partners $1.7 million, CISL $1.7 million. The major components of the project are to redesign the sewer system and the wastewater treatment plant, solutions for water reuse and water recycling, improved lighting, improved drainage to alleviate perennial flooding in the car park, relocation and upgrade of vendor booths to increase the number from 28 to 36, establishment of a utilities and services corridor that would have served the new location of the vendor booths at Maracas Beach, resurfacing and upgrade of the car park to accommodate just over 460 spaces, improved and expanded public washrooms, mitigation of sand loss from the beach, and very importantly, diversion of the North Coast Road to the south end of the car park to address the problem of serious traffic congestion on weekends and public holidays.
The project you said was terminated in 2011? Or we started in 2011?
No, the original project was started around 2009. Cabinet, very first go at the Maracas Beach Improvement Project. It was first started around 2009 and then was terminated in 2010 to 2011.
And the reason?
It was found by the administration at that time that the cost was too high, the scope was too wide.
And the cost at that time was how much?
$265 million. The current project came to be terminated on the instructions of the Minister in the Office of the Attorney General on April 2016. And this project was terminated on the grounds of breach of contract due to quality issues, delays in time of delivery. Following on that termination, there has now been a restart of the project by virtue of cabinet approved on May 25th, 2016. So following the termination of April 2016, it has now restarted again in May 2016.
With the same scope?
But what is happening currently is cabinet, by virtue of the cabinet minute of May 25th, 2016, has detailed a work strategy. So it is intended to be the same scope, but it is also being reviewed by the Ministry of Works through NITCO and PURE. By virtue of the recent cabinet approval, the project has now been broken up into 3 work packages for ease of accomplishment. The 3 work packages are the road works, the car park, and other civil works, which are to be executed by PURE. And building construction, meaning the vendor booths, administrative building, washrooms, etc., plus the upgrade of the sewer treatment plant and the main sewer, the sewer mains, to be executed by NITCO. So that's the new strategy, work strategy for accomplishment of the finish of the project. Currently, we are working in very close collaboration with the Ministry of Works and its agencies of PURE and NITCO to get the project fully on stream again. They are currently looking at the designs that were done by the former contractor just to ensure adequacy. The project to the former contractor was a design build, so they are checking to ensure completeness of designs. In the interim, it has become necessary to do some emergency remedial works at the site in 2 areas, one being drainage and one being sewer, because of some extreme situations that currently exist there. So those remedial works are being undertaken as we speak. As part of Cabinet agreement of May 2016, a quantity surveyor was engaged to do a complete state of works at the site. That report is completed and is due to be in the ministry before the end of this week. That report would inform the extent of works of completion and what needs to be done. And following on that report, we are to engage further to get a complete budget for the works that are required to bring the project to completion. At the same time, by virtue of cabinet approval, we undertook a financial audit of the invoices. There were invoices submitted by CISL. These were to the tune of about $21 million outstanding claims for works that have been claimed to be completed, amounting to 26% of the works. 21 million is broken down between CalCos, CISL, and LYP. The matter is currently under litigation and is being handled by the Office of the Attorney General. But Cabinet did agree for a for an audit of the invoices submitted by CISL and LYP. Today, the financial audit has been completed. We are currently in the process of doing a technical audit as recommended by the auditor who did the financial audit. That's pretty much the state of where we are.
Dr. Bodo?
Yeah. Just a follow-up question on the same project. Has there been an issue with the land ownership at Maracas Beach?
No.
There's no issue with that?
No, there's no issue with land ownership.
Okay.
There was a very small issue on a particular piece there's a squat on the land which is being dealt with. But aside from that, there was the regional corporation who had an issue with a part of the land that was part of the project space, but that has been dialogued and sorted out.
So that's not going to be a challenge going forward?
No, that wouldn't be a challenge going forward.
Member Webster Roy?
Through you, is there from the ministry or TDC to attend international sporting events such as the World Cup or the upcoming Olympics?
None, member. We have none. No.
Not a TDC or the ministry?
No.
Okay, a follow-up question, Madam Chair. Okay, in light of that, please tell me what has been the returns to destination Trinidad and Tobago from the 2.1 million paid by the ministry in June 2014 to take a local football team, cultural performing artists, and a tourism team out. That would have included the then permanent secretary, the director, research and planning, monitoring evaluation coordinator, head communications, and an executive assistant to showcase Trinidad and Tobago tourism as a tourism destination in Argentina.
Sorry, what's the question, member?
Based on your response that there's no provision, right? Sorry, based on your response that there's no provision, in 2014, a delegation would have gone out of the country to promote destination Trinidad and Tobago in Argentina. What has been the return on investment? 2-point-something million was spent. What has been the benefit to Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, if I may attempt to answer that, beyond branding and advertisement of the Trinidad and Tobago tourism product in Argentina, there was no follow-up or additional work done beyond that initial visit. Our arrivals out of South America still are largely out of Brazil. The market has shown increased arrivals in South America, but they are very minimal. But I don't know that beyond that initial voyage into Argentina in particular and the South American market, that the market has grown in any significant way beyond the minimal numbers, save and except for the branding and advertising the destination there. It would require further follow-ups through perhaps tourism attaches or different strategies in marketing, but in terms of any real benefit that we could positively identify, I would say that some of the increased arrivals out of the South American market may be attributed to it, but it's not something that has been significant.
But before you would have taken a decision to do that, I'm sure you'd have done some kind of research, would have indicated that maybe it's a possible market, something you should try to explore instead of going to spend 2.1 million and not really getting anything back?
Yes, I think in the research at the ministry, there has been a long conversation about the benefits of going, of expanding our reach to South America and the potential that it brings. For instance, even Tobago with Gol, flight out of Brazil. So between Trinidad and Tobago, there's we've all recognized that it is a largely untapped area for us. The Copa flight out of Panama also provides us with some accessibility to those markets. So perhaps the strategy of going to Argentina may not have been the best strategy at the time, but the market of South America still remain very viable to us, as Mr. Solomon would probably expand more on.
So in terms of the current fiscal year, taking lessons learned from that, what are some of the strategies you intend to implement going forward?
So I can ask Mr. Solomon to speak to those strategies.
Remember, you're speaking specifically to South America? Yes? Well, the numbers year to date show that there is an increase in arrivals from that market of 8% over the same period in 2015. We are looking at strengthening our relationship with the current main provider of airlift from that part of the world, Copa Airlines, because they do provide a very wide network to all of the South American countries. And additionally, of course, as Mr. Maraj would have mentioned, the THA's partnership with Gol Airline out of Brazil. So we plan to collectively build on those relationships. You look at Brazil, which would have featured very highly, 2 to 3 years ago on the radar. Now it's almost the exact opposite for that particular country as a source market. So there is some work that has to be done to sort of get us in the right position to adequately target that market. I believe that in 2014 there would have been the first roadshow to Panama. So again, capitalizing on the presence of that airline flying into Port of Spain, which does pretty well in terms of load factor. So, as I say, there is some work to be done to sort of get us in the right position to identify the key areas, because it's not going to be every country in South America. Identify the key areas, the ones that can give us the best returns on the investment. Right now it looks like, countries like Argentina, Colombia, Uruguay, Panama from Central America, of course. I think in 2017, we would be in a better position to, make some overtures to that market. Right now, just in terms of our financial resources, going after new markets is a challenge. But the key to that would be airlift, and we do benefit from having some pretty good airlift from that region. So I think in 2017 we may be able to speak a bit more on that.
The current situation in terms of the airlift and all of that, you're satisfied, or you're seeing room for improvement and your strategies? Well,
I think if let's come back to Copa Airlines. Copa has daily service into Port of Spain, sometimes twice a day, and it really has an excellent network with different airports in South America. So flying into Port of Spain, there is that plus. The Gol flight from Brazil, that only started last year. So our expectations need to be tempered a bit, because that is a huge market, and now one that is going through some serious economic challenges. If we constantly have the opportunity to sit and meet with other airline partners and tour operator partners or tour operator companies at some of the major trade shows that we attend. We build on that and try to develop on both sides, both the airline side and our side, the business case, to make the full overture to that airline to fly into the country.
Okay, we know there's destination Trinidad, destination Tobago, and then there's destination Trinidad and Tobago. Is there continuous and meaningful collaboration amongst all stakeholders, Ministry of Tourism, the Tobago House of Assembly, and all the other agencies coming together, so whatever limited resources we have, we use it to the best advantage of destination Trinidad and Tobago?
I think we've come a long way, and there's still work to be done. But now that tourism once again is a hot button, and seen as a key in terms of the diversification of the economy, more and more, whether it's associations, or on the public sector side, we are all getting together, for that one common cause. PS would have mentioned the Standing Committee on Tourism, which is very far-reaching in terms of both the public sector and private sector participation. And, I could only see good coming out of that, with all of the collaboration.
Member Bodu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, with regards to the trust in diversification of the tourism sector, and in particular ecotourism, is there any consideration being given to the Orupuch Lagoon as a possibility for development in that vein?
Thank you, sir. As a part of our inventory, we investigate all the potential of all the sites throughout Trinidad and Tobago. So we have proposals for those sites in terms of Orupuch that is very similar to the Caroni area, whereby in terms of you could go from by Mosquito Creek, go up to the Godino River, and go in terms of right up into Penal DB. So there are those proposals, but in terms of we need funding and probably assistance from this committee to ask the government to give us more funding in terms that we could develop more sites throughout Trinidad and Tobago, sir.
If I may, in the same vein, with regards to involvement in the San Fernando Waterfront Development Project, is the Ministry of Tourism or TDC has any input or involvement in that?
Correct.
We have no input currently, but I'm aware that there was a committee that operated maybe about a year ago with charge for development of the San Fernando waterfront, a pretty high-level committee, but I'm not sure where that is at this point in time. But the ministry doesn't have involvement.
Sorry, would you say it's important that perhaps the Ministry of Tourism or TDC be involved?
But the Ministry of Tourism was involved in that, they sat on the committee. So it was not an initiative of the Ministry of Tourism.
I know, yeah.
But there were a number of major relevant players who were involved.
All right, so I'll just close with one last question, and that's with regards to the Sugar Heritage Village and the museum. I know it's a long-term project, but I see expenditure of just over $6 million to date. Can you just give us an update as to where that has taken us and the current status of that project?
Sure. The Sugar Heritage Village and Museum project was officially launched in May of 2011. At that time, a committee was set up with charge for taking the project further. Essentially, the intent of the project was to preserve and showcase the history and the socio-economic fabric of the operations of the sugar industry, an industry that underpinned the country's industrial development. Also, the intent was to create a living monument to the legacy of sugar since the days of African slavery and then indentureship. So it was really a project aimed at preserving, showcasing a legacy that was so critical for the development of the country. Also, it would have certainly added to the diversification of the tourism product in that it would have created, or is intended to create rather, a very diverse product with a broad mix of heritage, culture, sports, recreation, agriculture, and education by virtue of what the site is. The site is approximately 500 acres in size, and that includes the space that a number of buildings currently occupy. Buildings meaning about 40 residents who actually live on site. You have a number of government offices. You have NAMDEVCO, you have a school, CISL is there, a number of offices are there, so that the available project space is just over 350 acres of land. The committee was very instrumental in a lot of achievements to date, in that a number of buildings that were approaching almost complete dilapidation state were repurposed into one being a visitor information center. There's currently a visitor information center. There's a building on the compound, Seveler House, that has been converted into a sugar museum. There's the Seveler Club, which is a recreational club space. Of course, there's a golf course, and there are other buildings. The committee was instrumental in collecting a number of artifacts, including 200 feet of railway lines, 4 locomotive engines, a harvester, grinding stone, animal-driven winch, plowing and tilling equipment, and something called a call bell, which was used to call the indentures and those who preceded them. Critically, we had virtually tons of documents being gathered from wherever they were, collected, cleaned, sorted, sanitized, cataloged. There's another building that is now called the Research and Documentation Center that was refurbished, and where all these documents are now stored and showcased. The intent of that being that researchers and all those who are interested in that kind of history could go into that building and access such information. Further to that, 200 audio visuals were done by ex-workers of the sugar industry from a very broad cross-section of areas. 52 video clips where we actually videoed persons from the industry, and 1,000 digitized photos. All these were done for the benefit of the museum. Now, the project is one that is, since the closure of Caroni back in 2003, there was a cabinet approval then that the Seveler Club be used for establishment of a sugar museum. Many years had passed and there was no progress with respect to this, but there were a few people who were very passionate about conservation and of ensuring that the remnants of what were left didn't fall into total disrepair. And I can, call the names of those persons. They were Professor Brinsley Samaru and Dr. Hollis Liverpool, both of UDT at the time, around 2008, 2009. The Ministry of Tourism stumbled upon these gentlemen, and they were in the process of trying to conceptualize the Sugar Museum and other uses of the buildings that were there. So through that dialogue, the project became one defined as a Sugar Heritage Village and Museum. It was approved by Cabinet in February 2011 and launched on May 2011. Subsequent to that, the work of the then committee was progressing to the extent that there was a clear approach to engage private sector partnership into the project by virtue of what it was. It had opportunities for development of components like amphitheater, a farmer's market, a botanical gardens. There are indeed in excess of 100 variety of cane that we were advised of. The intent was to capture this into the botanical gardens. There's the opportunity of a hotel, of guest houses, and more so within the context of what is happening in that area in terms of the National Aquatic Center, the Point Lisa's Estate, and the cycling velodrome. So the space lent itself to huge opportunity in terms of private public sector development. There was an attempt by the committee as well to engage the European Union for support. But within the context of all this, it was realized that when private sector was approached, there was always a call for a master plan for the project. Hence, the ministry undertook to engage the services of PwC to do a master plan for the Sugar Heritage Village and Museum project. That was completed in 2014. And essentially, the master plan spoke to designs, conceptual designs for the project, architectural designs, engineering studies were done, inspection reports were done, infrastructure needs were assessed, utilities were assessed, feasibility and market studies were done, and some amount of phasing was done as well. That plan was approved, and in May 2015, actually, the plan was approved. And simultaneously, a new implementation committee was established, given that the new focus was now on getting projects implemented within the space in view of the recommendations that were made by the master plan. The committee met once or twice, but subsequent to that, well, there was a change in the administration and the project was embraced. So a meeting of several of the ministers, the project happens to span several ministries because at the time of the closure, different ministries were given responsibility for different components of that space. For instance, Ministry of Education.
Yes, I think that's quite a bit of information. So is it ongoing as we speak?
It is. Currently, well, if we go back to January now, ministers met on it, ministers with the interest in it, the culture, the sports, for several club, tourism, communications, and there have been site visits by the ministers and so. The intent is very much to take this project forward by virtue of its unique potential for product, tourism product. Currently, what is being looked at is the implementation, the governance for implementation, because it is critical because of the complexity of the project and because of what is required in moving forward that a governance entity be established. Currently, Caroni 1975 Limited was the legal entity for the project, executing agency, but for various circumstances and given, I think, the company is kind of scaling back operations and so, an appropriate governance structure is being looked at. And that is what is currently occupying the attention and minds of the Ministry of Tourism. And
Sure.
we are working on that, and that will, once that comes to be, then it will give us a much clearer direction of how to proceed with actual execution of the components.
Sure. Thank you very much, Madam PS.
I just have a question for Mr. Chin, and this is in respect to your financial statements and your annual reports for TDC. I believe what we said at the last submission for your financial statements was 2012.
2012 was the last.
Okay.
2012 was the last.
And might I ask, because my understanding is as a state enterprise, you're supposed to submit them to Ministry of Finance within 4 months of the end of the fiscal year?
Yes, correct.
So might I ask, what has been the reason for such a delay?
Well, in the first instance, for the 2013 and 2014 audits, which are now being processed, there were a number of issues that arose and questions that were asked, I think, with regard to the 2012 financials. And that has to do with an issue with regard to, I think, is CHOGM. Is it? And our finance manager is a little more current with those. If you can continue with this. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, CEO. Madam Chair, a 2012 audit was signed off by the board in 2014. It took about over a year to be completed. There was a accounting issue with PKF that was sorted out, and eventually the board signed it. However, at that point in time, the board wanted to change auditors. Suppose with the governance structure, the PKF were there before. So the process in order to change auditors was done with the Ministry of Finance as well. And the new appointed auditors were done in 2015, which are KPMG. And they have started to engage and working on 2013 and 2014 concurrently to finish by hopefully September of this year.
So, might I ask, with respect to, that will bring you up to 2014, you say, what steps are being taken to ensure that there's not a recurrence and that you become up to date in the shortest possible time?
Right. The audit subcommittee is working closely with the external auditing firm as well to ensure that by 2017 we are current with the financial statements, as well as to ensure that going forward that we move currently with the regulations as is so required.
Okay, and what was the accounting issue that caused the problem, and have steps been taken to rectify that so that there won't be a recurrence?
Well, right now that is the attention of the board. As I said, it was signed off. It related to a matter in which the accounts payables and the accounts receivables and the way we treat some of the government grants with IAS 20, International Accounting Standard 20. So the auditors at the time made a recommendation that the board took a while to digest and then agreed to. However, the status of those financial statements again is before the board in terms of how they treat with it.
So those issues would not have been picked up either by your internal audit or your monitor and evaluation unit?
It was not a issue of an error so much as an issue of how you treat with government grants. In this particular, it was a treatment of the payment of taxes and the receivable or the anticipated receivable that was done on the books in anticipation of the government reimbursing the amount that was paid as taxes at that time. So it was an accounting treatment, not an error in terms of anything.
But there is a relationship between the TDC and the Investments Division.
Yes.
Yes? So that wouldn't that have been picked up again before the end of the financial year based on your relationship with the Investment Division?
There was communication from 2014 with the investments in terms of the treatment of that accounting of the receivable. But dialogue has been with the Ministry of Finance, so they are aware of the treatment, and we've had correspondence from the Ministry of Finance as well on the matter.
Let me ask the PS, in terms of annual reports, the last we have seen is 2009. What would have been the last year for annual reports?
Not administrative reports, because we are current with administrative reports.
You are current with your administrative
Yeah,
reports, so that would be 2015.
Yeah, we have the 2014 were already approved by cabinet, and we are the 2015 they are completed and are now to be sent to cabinet. They are currently being reviewed to be forwarded to cabinet.
Okay, and therefore the annual reports would be the Tourism Development Company.
Both the TDC's administrative report and the Ministry's administrative report are completed.
They're both current.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, P.S., what I would like to ask you at this stage, because we've asked questions and for some enlightenment, and I think what I would like to ask you is if you can give us some insight into which you may feel that this committee may be able to assist you in terms of recommendations that may help ease some of the challenges which you face.
Madam Chair, by virtue of the questions that you all have asked, you have opened up our minds in terms of what areas we need to pay closer attention to, and of the importance of proper reporting proper evaluation, ensuring efficiency of spend, and ensuring that procedures and controls are in place and strengthened with a view to ensuring that the auditing function, meets the needs of proper spend of funds. So we will certainly go back. Well, by virtue of what you have questioned, we have gathered recommendations indirectly, so that we will address those and go back again. We have accomplished a lot, I would say, by virtue of our systems and procedures and our reporting and our clinical approach to ensuring that we meet the Exchequer and Audit Act and all the other regulations and procedures that are laid down in the manual, as well as the various circulars by the Ministry of Finance and the Comptroller of Accounts. And we think we have come a long way, and we will continue to strive to give off the best that we can. And we think the work of your committee is most certainly commendable, because you help us to strengthen ourselves.
To say thank you, Mrs. Rampersad, to you and your team for such an enlightening exchange and for your cooperation. And therefore, Mr. Chin, Mr. Solomon, Mr. Raghunana, and Mr. Bal, Mr. Maraj, Mr. Dennis, and of course, Ms. Jamraj, I can't read your surname, double-barrel surname. On behalf of the committee, we'd like to thank you all for going beyond the duty to be here and share with us. I'm sure the listening public has also followed with great interest, and therefore I wanted to thank our viewers on the Parliament channel, Channel 11, our followers on the FM 105.5, and also our participants on social media for taking the time to be here to participate. I want to thank the members of the media. I also want to thank the members of the Secretariat. I wish you all well. Have a good evening, safe journey home. I now bring this meeting to a close. Pleasant evening.
Thank you, Chair.